Hello and welcome to another illustration video for illustrating the Pokemon trading card game. Today we turn back the clock and are going to take a look at the classic deck Haymaker, featuring Bill, Scyther, Electabuzz, and Hitmonchan. All of these cards were basic Pokemon from the first two original sets of Pokemon cards, and they had some really fun characters to illustrate. You can see just based on this sample here that we've got a pretty diverse color range. So in this video, I'm going to take a look at some of the things I did right, some of the things I did wrong, and then some of the things I might do over again if I were to go back and work on this little mini illustration series. As with all of these videos, the first thing we're going to take a look at is our Pokemon trainer, and for this one it is going to be Bill. So you can see I've got my little sketch here. I'm kind of comparing it to the Colress I made in a previous video, and while the proportions aren't drastically different to what I've done in the past, I do think that this one is a little bit more successful overall. I really tried to look at the posture and expression that was in the trading card and compare it to what I was making in my illustration. You can see I've got some colors that I'm pulling from the Pokemon Adventures manga over there on the side. Very purple and very orange. And overall, I really like this image. It's probably my favorite trainer that I've made so far. Maybe it's just because of the callback to the original card, but also I think the colors are pretty appropriate for what balances in this series of 4 overall. And I just really like the proportions that I've changed just a little bit. The face structure works a little better. The hair is interesting. The features, the limbs, the hands, I think it all works a little bit better than it has in previous illustrations. Now up next we've got one that has been classically very hard for me to draw, and that was Scyther. I remember loving Scyther as a kid, and then when I found out he was so hard to draw, it kind of just like fell out of favor with me. I didn't like it quite as much because it wasn't something I could redraw very easily on my own. And it's pretty difficult to turn in space. It's got a lot of different limbs and extra features in 3D shapes that you got to think about how they're going to move in a different range of motion. So you can see I've kind of got my little color swatch and pose guide down there, manipulated from an original image. But in terms of this one, I kind of like what I came up with. It's very front facing, but I think it's still dynamic. It's got a really, really nice silhouette to it, and I think a nice silhouette with Pokemon is something that really sells their designs pretty easily and right off the bat. In this illustration, I've also decided to go, obviously, with a little bit more saturation and let the contrast come from natural color combinations as opposed to saturation and desaturation in the actual values. You can see me kind of tweaking and playing around with some of the choices. Eventually, I settle on this lime green base with a cerulean style shadow, and that's also kind of like juxtaposed against kind of a dark gray yellow shadow on the wings and kind of the parts that are supposed to be more translucent. And overall, I really like how that turned out. I think it's got an expressive face. I think the silhouette is really strong. And I think in terms of the colors that you think of for Scyther, this fits that original color scheme, but also provides a little bit of an updated and more dynamically saturated twist to it. So overall, pretty satisfied with this one. Pretty satisfied with Bill. Pretty satisfied with Scyther, and 2 out of 2 ain't bad so far. So up next is going to be Electabuzz. Electabuzz is really fun to draw. It's got much simpler shapes compared to Scyther, and a lot of the dynamism comes from finding little places to add kind of spikes that resemble the lightning, and then kind of the tiger stripes that also resemble the lightning. So it's got different little tufts of fur on the face, on the elbows, and this works nicely because you get a kind of blank outline where the yellow is going to fill in, and you get a black solid outline that kind of makes for a natural contrast in the shape language of Electabuzz overall. You can see I've got my little sample color swatch there that I'm kind of pulling from. I take those original images and kind of manipulate them in a way that I think provides like an updated look to a color palette that I'm more interested in for creating cohesion throughout the set. You saw briefly there, I contemplated the idea of like making these spikes on his head, kind of like lightning rods, and putting a little lightning effect on there. But that was pretty different compared to everything else that was being created for this, so I decided not to go with that. You can see in this one I've balanced the yellow, which is very goldenrod, with some magenta, maybe slightly a little more purple in some areas, slightly a little more pink in some other areas for the shadows, and then just white highlights. And overall, pink, yellow, and white with this much black outlining from the tiger stripes, I think was pretty successful. So overall, I'm pretty happy with how this series of illustrations is going so far. I really like all of these characters a lot. And that would last leave us with Hitmonchan. I wanted a little bit more movement in this pose. Bill and Scyther were kind of just standing there. Electabuzz definitely has some posture and some weight. So with Hitmonchan, I wanted to get a little movement into the mix, and I think I was able to accomplish that pretty well here. I really went for different colors on this one because I wanted to balance what had been created with my other characters. So thinking if Electabuzz is yellow, Scyther is green, I was like, let's really push for blue and purple in this one, and I think we were able to take Hitmonchan's original colors, which are typically very desaturated, and really add some dynamic color structure to it. I think this still reads as Hitmonchan, but as more of an intensely saturated version of it. Looking back at this now, the only thing that I'm seeing that I would probably specifically add is a little bit more shine on the boxing glove to really make it feel like it's made of a different material. There's not much shine to the image, so a nice highlight on that boxing glove would have worked well. But overall, here's the finished 4 images in one singular wallpaper together. I wasn't sure what background really spoke to the cohesion of these 4 elements, but since they were from the first 2 sets of cards, I was thinking what's something really basic that we can have some nice colors at play. And when I think of blue, yellow, green, very natural, standard, Windows Vista background landscape is what came to mind. So I ran that through a couple filters, added some halftones, did a little color shifting, and overall I think it works really well together. This is a nice set of 4 illustrations that I'm pretty happy with overall. This is my favorite set of 4 that I've done so far for this series. So I'll be looking forward to doing a couple more of these at least, and I really appreciate you watching. Thanks for your time, and have a great day.